Okay, let's dive right into this one. Today, we are unpacking a really fascinating piece of folklore, and it is the perfect blend of supernatural chills and honestly, a classic tale of human greed. We're looking at the mystery of the haunted Dak Gar. Now, for us, that basically means an isolated rural post office. The source material we're analyzing paints this incredibly vivid picture of a small village hiding a seriously dark secret. And it all centers around this one post office that literally nobody dares to step foot in after dark. So let's look at how this whole story unfolds and what it actually tells us about the crazy lengths people will go to for justice. Which brings us to the core mystery, right? Why on earth does every single postmaster flee after just one night? Well, our source introduces us to Mahesh. He's the newly appointed postmaster, and he arrives at this remote Dakar right in the middle of a dense forest. Almost immediately, bam, massive red flag. His assigned assistant, a local guy named Raju, flat out refuses to stay the night. Raju basically looks at Mahesh and says, "Look, I would rather lose my job than spend a single second in that building once the sun goes down." And he practically sprints away in sheer terror before dusk, leaving Mahesh entirely alone in this old, dusty, isolated structure. Talk about the absolute perfect setup for a haunting. And you know what? Roger's fear turns out to be entirely justified when you look at how Mahesh's first night actually plays out. So Mahesh is there, he's trying to just read a book, kind of ignore the isolation, but the auditory horror escalates so fast. Right at midnight, the silence is just shattered by the terrifying howling of jackals. Now Mahesh tries to brush it off, oh, it's just normal forest noises. But then, 1 a.m. hits and the local dogs start barking frantically, like they're reacting to some unseen presence. Finally, the real climax of this nightly terror hits at 2 a.m. He hears the unmistakable sound of heavy, labored breathing, followed by the sharp ring of a phantom bicycle bell, and then the rhythmic squeak of pedals moving through the dark. Keep in mind, Mahesh is completely alone out there in the woods. He's literally paralyzed by fear, just hiding under his covers until dawn. Well, the next morning brings this super chilling revelation down at the local tea stall. Mahesh is exhausted, totally shaken, and he heads into the village just to grab some morning tea. He casually mentions to the stall owner, "Hey, I'm the new postmaster. I just spent the night at the Dakar," and the entire stall just goes dead silent. The locals are absolutely shocked. They're staring at him in total disbelief, and they let it slip that no one stays the night there. I mean, anyone who has ever been posted there either runs away the very next day or just point blank refuses to stay the night at all. This dramatic irony is just brilliant because Mahesh is just starting to realize that his nightmare wasn't just his imagination playing tricks on him. No, this is an established, terrifying village curse.
So, what exactly is this entity even doing? Well, it turns out it's not just trying to scare people away. It's actively hunting specific targets. The text introduces us to a villager named Vipul. Now, his wife has been complaining, really wanting a vacation to Bombay, but they have absolutely zero money. Then, out of nowhere, a mysterious phantom drops a letter at his door offering this incredibly simple, tempting deal. "I will give you 5,000 rupees if you meet me at the banyan tree at 1 a.m. The writer explicitly says they know Vipul is desperate for cash and willing to do anything for it. I mean, think about that. The entity is highly intelligent. It's actually using the official mechanism of a Dakgar, a letter, to set a deadly trap.
It's incredibly cunning, right? It is literally weaponizing greed. Because 5,000 rupees is more than enough to completely blind a desperate guy like Beeple to the painfully obvious danger here. He doesn't even care who sent the letter or why. The allure of easy money just completely overrides all of his survival instincts. So he walks out into the pitch-black forest towards that banyan tree behind the post office. But instead of some mysterious rich benefactor, he hears that exact same phantom bicycle bell that Mahesh heard. Suddenly, a pack of vicious dogs chases him down, and this glowing bicycle-riding entity charges at him with lightning speed. Vipul's greed led him straight into a brutal, terrifying trap, and his mutilated body is found the very next morning. This entity operates with terrifying precision, basically running this calculated 3-step trap. The very next night, the village mukhya, or headman, finds his family targeted. His daughter Nupur and her husband Baldev get a letter. But this time it is not a bribe. The entity shifts tactics entirely over to blackmail. Step 1, the letter arrives, accusing Baldev of some dark hidden sin and demanding they meet at the banyan tree at midnight if they want the secret kept safe. And just like Vipul, they follow the steps right into the trap. Step 2, they arrive at the tree. Step 3, the phantom bicycle entity strikes. Mahesh, who's actually in the post office nearby, hears their screams and runs out, but it's too late.
He finds them dead in the exact same brutal manner as Vipul.
So, what is the real motive behind these killings? Well, the terrified village Mukhya claims it's just a mindless, cursed beast. He tries to tell Mahesh that years ago, the very first postmaster, this bright young guy named Aryaman, was tragically torn apart by a wild animal in the forest, and now it's his spirit haunting the area. But Mahesh is smart. He immediately realizes the tragic truth has to be something else entirely. I mean, mindless monsters do not write calculated blackmail letters, do they? They don't target specific people with hidden sins. Honestly, the audacity to think you can explain away organized blackmail as an animal attack. Mahesh knows for sure there's a much deeper, much more human mystery at play here. Which naturally leads us to the ultimate question: who is the ghost? Mahesh decides he just has to know the truth. He absolutely refuses to run away like the others did. That night, despite the howling jackals and that terrifying bicycle bell ringing out in the dark, Mahesh stands his ground right at the door of the Dakgar. At 11 p.m., the phantom cyclist approaches. But here's the twist. Instead of attacking Mahesh, the ghostly figure simply throws a letter right at him and vanishes into the night. And when Mahesh opens it, he discovers it's written by Aryaman himself. The entity is finally revealing the true story of what actually happened to him.
Aryaman's letter details this absolutely heartbreaking betrayal. He writes, "The Mukhya wanted my savings. He and those men betrayed me." The letter explains how he had saved his entire life's earnings, plus the money from selling his ancestral land, all to buy a large, beautiful house for his widowed mother. The house, technically, was owned by the Mukhya, but when Aryaman brought the cash to finalize the sale, the Mukhya, along with Vipul and Baldev, yep, the two men who were just killed, they completely betrayed him. They struck Aryaman over the head, stole his life savings, and dumped his body under that very banyan tree, covering it up to look like a tragic animal attack.
Now, what's really interesting here is how Mahesh handles this. Instead of just running to the police with a crazy ghost story, he sets this brilliant psychological trap. First, he goes straight to the Mukhya and claims Aryaman's ghost told him everything. He tells the Mukhya, "Look, I've hired a tantric, like a mystic, to banish the ghost forever." This effectively lures the corrupt leader to the Dakgar that night, but there is no tantric. When the Mukhya arrives, the ghost of Aryaman actually manifests. Terrified out of his mind, the Mukhya starts screaming, confessing to all of his crimes right out loud. And here is the absolute masterstroke. Mahesh had secretly hidden the local Kotwal, the police officer, nearby. The Kotwal overhears the entire confession. The Kotwal steps right out of the shadows, tells the Mukhya he's heard every single word, and moves to place him under arrest. But before human law can even take its course, supernatural justice takes over. And it is a genuinely awe-inspiring moment. Aryaman's vengeful spirit physically lifts the terrified Mukhya high into the air. In this final act of retribution for stealing his life and completely destroying his mother's future, the spirit drops the Mukhya from a massive height, leading to his immediate death. Just like that, the ghost has finally eliminated all three of his murderers. The story wraps up with some really beautiful poetic justice. With the truth finally out there, and the Kotwal acting as an official witness, Mahesh ensures that Aryaman's stolen savings are fully accounted for. And, crucially, Aryaman's mother is rightfully moved into the grand house her son died trying to buy for her. Also, notice the massive emotional shift in the supernatural elements here. Before, the sound of that phantom bicycle bell was pure terror, sending postmasters fleeing for their lives. But after justice is served, Mahesh actually continues his job at the Dakgar. Now, when he hears that phantom bell in the night, he doesn't feel fear at all. He knows it's just Aryaman's spirit, peacefully checking in, offering a sound of deep gratitude to the man who finally brought him peace. Which leaves us with a final, really provocative thought to chew on. When exactly does a haunting become a quest for justice? This piece of folklore perfectly captures how stories use the supernatural not just to scare the living daylights out of us, but to expose deep-rooted human corruption. Because the real monster in the story, it wasn't the ghost on the bicycle. It was the greed of the village leaders who literally murdered an innocent man for financial gain. It really makes you wonder just how many other local ghost stories are actually buried cries for truth and justice, just waiting for someone brave enough, like Mahesh, to simply stand their ground and listen. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and definitely keep questioning the deeper meanings behind the stories you hear.